Hey guys, I'm back with another tutorial. In this video we will have a look at how to image, stack and process pictures of the moon. As the moon is very large in our sky, you can capture it with many different methods. You can use a digital camera or even a modern smartphone, but for this tutorial it is optimal if you capture your images of the moon with help of a telescope and a planetary camera. This is because we will use the lucky imaging technique. This means we will need to take our pictures with a very short exposure time. The shorter the exposure time of each image, the better we can freeze turbulences in the air. In this clip, we can see how the moon flickers quite a lot, and this effect gets worse the closer the moon is to the horizon, as there will be more air between you and the moon. So you would optimally image the moon when it is directly above you. However, the effect of this isn't that influential, so as long as the moon isn't very close to the horizon, this effect isn't too noticeable. As I've already mentioned, the exposure time should be as low as possible. In this footage, the exposure time is 1/250th of a second, and the gain of my camera was set to 100, but this value is very dependent on the circumstances. For example, how big your telescope is, so how much light you can capture, or how bright the moon is in that particular night. So you will have to experiment with this value until the moon isn't over or underexposed, and you can already see some contrast in your live view. In this footage there is a total of 10,000 frames. However, we won't make use of every single frame, but later only select the best percentile of the whole capture. For that, we're going to use the software Autostakkert, and we are also going to stack our images with this software. So you will now need to load your footage into it, and to do that you can either just drag the file onto the software, or you click on this first step, Open, and then select your footage. I have 4 different captures right here, and for now I'll go with the first one. Hit Open, and in this second window right here, we now have our different frames, and we can go through all of these frames right here. So as you can see, I have around 10,000 frames. We don't need this window right now. We're going to stick with the first one, and the first thing right here is image stabilization. So we can choose between surface and planet, and surface is for solar, lunar and deep sky recordings, so we're going to choose that as we have our moon footage right here. We do not want to disable stabilization, and improve tracking. As it says right here, it's slower but a more accurate tracking. So if the moon moves a lot during your capture, in my footage the moon moves a bit but not a lot, so I could disable this, but I'm just gonna leave this ticked. And now we have an important setting, expand or cropped. Now if we go for expand, it's going to use every single frame. For example, in this frame we have more footage of the moon in this top left corner as the moon moves there a bit, and we have even more from this top left section in the later frames. So if we go and expand, we will have the whole image shown. So every single frame that captured something will be in the final image. And if we go and cropped, it will only stack this part of the moon that is covered in all frames. So the final image will be a little bit smaller, but everything you will see in this final image will then be very sharp, and I guess this is the better option to go for here. So I will select cropped, but you can also go for expand. Now this quality estimator will show us the quality of our single frames, and I would have this ticked. And with the noise robust, it depends on how noisy your images are. So this footage I have right here isn't too noisy, so the standard would be around 6, but I think I can go with 5 here, as it's pretty clear footage I have right there. Now this, I would definitely leave that on local, and what AP means, we're going to get to that very soon. But for now, we can just leave that on local, and hit Analyze. And it's then going to take quite a while depending on how fast your computer is and how many frames you have. And I'll see you in a bit. Alright, it's done analyzing now, and it took around 10 minutes. And we now have this quality graph, which is pretty important. And this gray line shows the quality of our pictures over time, but we don't really need that. For us, the green line right here is very important, because this shows us how many pictures of which quality we have. So if we click, you can just left click anywhere in this graph, and it'll then show you in this other window how many percent of pictures you've kind of selected now. So if I say I want the quality to be above 50%, I will click around there. Now it shows the quality is at 50.7%, and it's the top 28.7% of pictures. So this kind of lets you see how high quality your single frames are. And we're going to get to that very soon. But for now, we have to go to this reference frame. You can select this double stack reference. It takes more time, and the reference frame will then be a bit more accurate. So I'm in no hurry, so I can select that. But if you want to be done fast with your stacking, you might not want to select that. Then with this, you can just leave that on auto size. And over here, we have to select the output file. And I'll always go with TIFF, but you can also select the other two. And now we have to decide how many frames do we want to stack. As I've already said, I have 10,000 frames in this whole footage, and you always want to stack around at least 1,000 or 2,000. So if I go with 20% of the stack, so you can select that here, or you can just type in a number, for example 2,000, but I'm just going to go with 20%. So I will have 2,000 pictures then, and you can also add multiple there. So I can also go with 10%, so we will have 1,000 and 2,000 frames stacked, so we can compare that later. And we can also go around if we, okay, so I'm now at around 9.8%. So all of these pictures to the left here have a pretty good quality, and they will then be stacked in this 10% stack. And the 20% stack, yeah, around there, top 20% it says, have a lower quality, but we have more pictures. So you always want to kind of experiment with these settings, because there's no guideline on what you need to choose there to get the best results. So I always like to go with 2 or maybe even 3 different settings here, just to see what fits the footage best. You don't want to take this sharpened box, because we will sharpen the image ourselves later, but RGB align is useful here. Save in folders, you can tick that. I don't normally do that. And this free field, you can type something here, like for example, if you're imaging Jupiter, type in Jupiter, or in my case Moon, but you don't have to do that. It's just the name of the output file. And then drizzle, you normally want to leave that on off. And we now go to this second window right here, and we have to set alignment points. So this is also what we've said here, that we want this local alignment point quality estimation. And this then means that the stack is then produced with different frames for each alignment point. And this alignment points you will have to place. You can either do that manually, but I wouldn't recommend that. So you can go for manual draw here, but we will just let the software do that. And what is very important is to take this multi-scale, because it will then use alignment points with different sizes, and whichever fits best, this will, so the software will decide which size of alignment point fits best with this footage. Now to the size of the alignment points, this isn't that important if we use multi-scale, but I would go for either 24 or 48. I usually go with 24. And for the minimum brightness, I can just, if I set that to 0 and then say place alignment point grid, you can see it also places alignment points here in this area where there's only dark background, so we don't want that. So I think 20 is a good way. Okay, so actually this was not the way to go with this footage because the moon gets a lot darker over in this region. So you also have to experiment with this. And if we say place again, we can see there's already more alignment points in this region, but it might just go down to 5. I don't want to go down to 0 because it will place them down there. So I think that 5 is a good way to go here, but you might also want to experiment with this later. And we can also go on 48 and see what it does then. You can see the alignment points are bigger, but it still uses alignment points of different sizes, as we said there. So you can experiment with these settings and just stack multiple times, but I think that 48 works pretty well here because you don't want too many alignment points. We already have around 900 here, that's already a lot, but this depends on the footage quite a bit. So I guess we're pretty good if we let that be as it is right now. And we're now ready to stack. We can just check. We have this 20% and 10%. Output file will be TIFF. And I will now hit stack. And we'll now have to wait until it's finished. Okay, so Autostakkert is now finished stacking our footage. And we can now go into our folder where we had our footage originally. And we now have this P10, I think it stands for percentage because we selected this 10 and 20%, and P20. So I'm going to open these and we can put them next to one another to kind of compare them. So we see that there's not really that big of a difference, and we might just zoom in closer on one of these craters, and we can see that there's really not much of a difference. So they're pretty similar, and I would say that maybe the 10% one might look a bit sharper, but it's really hard to tell. So I guess with this footage either of these settings would be fine, but I'm just going to continue with the 10% stack. We will now want to sharpen our image, and to do that I'm just going to close these and we will open RegiStax. Alright, it opened on my other monitor there. There we go. And we will now take this 10% image we have right there and just drag it into the software. Okay, so your image might be a little small right now, and you can go in full image and it'll be a lot bigger now. And what you want to do now is from these 3 tabs you want to go to misclick wavelet, and we can now go and change a few settings here. So I will want to use the linked wavelets, and we have this layer 1 enabled, and if we go to around 70 or something, that could be a good starting point. Okay, so we now have this kind of square where this filter or these wavelets are applied, and you can see that on the other side of the square, so around it, it's still the original image, so we already have a nice comparison. And if we look into the middle here, we can see that there's some weird stuff going on, so maybe this is a bit too much, so I might just go with around 60, so yeah, I think that should be fine for now. And with the second layer you might also want to go to around 30 maybe. Oh well, that's interesting. Now I don't know if that's just in RegiStax or if that's in the final image, but I might just go for do all and then save image. So we're going to do that real quick and just name that test real quick and see how that looks. I have our test right there. So that actually is in the final image. Okay, I did not expect that. We can delete that again. So I guess we don't want to do that. When you right click on this layer, you can just reset it. And we've already gotten this pattern going on here in the middle. So we might be able to get rid of that with using denoise. Yeah, so it gets a lot better already. So maybe we can also go for around 20 here. That's already, well, I haven't had that in any of my images before. But if we go on sharpen, I expect this effect to get worse. Okay, so maybe just, yeah, okay. So if we go to 0.15 denoise here, we can see that it's pretty much gone. We don't see any of that anymore, so that's good. And we could also not use the linked wavelets. So I'll just play with these settings a bit more and we'll see if the result gets any better. Okay, so I think these are pretty good settings for now, so we're going to go with do all, then it's going to apply that to the whole image, and save, and we're just gonna save that as linked wavelets. Okay, save. So we now, or I'll now try to do the same thing but without using the linked wavelets and see which result I'll get then. Okay, so I've gone for a bit of different settings now. As I've already said, no linked wavelets this time, and played with these settings a little bit. So that's all always very dependent on the footage and the image you have. So I'll hit do all again and then save as sharpened. And we can now compare these two. So we have our linked wavelets and our sharpened. Just put them next to one another. Now these kind of outlines you can see here already, these green, red, and blue outlines, they might just be in XNView, the program I use to view these images, or they might also be in the actual image itself. And if that's the case, you will just have to use another program to kind of like resize the image and cut off the edges, but that shouldn't be a problem. So you'll lose a little bit of your image, but that's really a very small amount. And I'm now going to kind of just zoom in on a crater again, just going to search one, which, yeah, okay. And if we compare those two, that's again very similar, so it's really difficult to kind of determine which one is better here. And I don't really know. That's pretty difficult to say here. Okay, so I've looked at the images now for some time, and I would say that I personally prefer the linked wavelets one a bit better, but this is really up to personal preference, and there's so little difference in these two pictures that either one is absolutely fine, and you can work with any of those settings here in RegiStax and you will get similar results. At least that's what my experience has shown. Okay, so we're already finished with our image now, and as I've already said before, we can now get rid of these outlines. I'm just going to do that in this program, but you can use whatever image manipulation program you want to use, and just like that I can crop that, and we now have an image that doesn't have any of these outlines. And we will now also compare this to our footage. This obviously is a video I'm opening right here, but we can just, let me get that over there and make that a little bit smaller. Okay, so I'm just going to pause it. So we now have a single frame here on the left side. Let me just do it like that. And the stacked image here on the right side. Now, as I selected cropped in Autostakkert, we have lost quite a significant amount of the image down here. And also, so as you can see and as I've said, this cropped setting in Autostakkert will make your final image a lot smaller, but I mainly wanted to focus on this big crater right here, and we've still gotten that beautifully in the middle of our picture, and we can see how much this has really changed our picture. And this is actually pretty cool how much detail you can get out of your footage. And I might just go ahead and grab, no, this was the wrong one, this one. So that's the image Autostakkert gave us. And we also see a huge difference now after we've used these wavelet settings in RegiStax. So if we just zoom in on this crater over here and over there. So the thing is that it kind of gets a little more, so this also depends on the settings. So here in this image we got from Autostakkert, it's a lot more smooth. Now here we obviously have these sharper edges which make the whole picture look a lot sharper. So up close this might look worse than the Autostakkert picture, but if you look at it from afar, which you will normally do if you look at your photos, then you don't really see that. And now that I look at it, this might already, like this line right here might be too aggressive, so you might want to tweak your settings in RegiStax a little more, but these settings really are up to personal preference. And I'm pretty happy with the picture, how it turned out now, and I think it's just amazing how much detail you can get out of your pictures when using Autostakkert and RegiStax. So I hope I could help you with this tutorial, and I hope that you now know how to process and stack your images of the moon, and I wish you the best of luck with trying this out for yourself. Clear skies, and bye.